There we go. We're recording. All right. Are we ready to move on? Go ahead, Ms. Margaret.
Well, like I said, good evening, everyone. My name is Margaret Gordon. I am I'm one of the founders and the co-director of West Oakland Environmental Indicators, going back to 2002, mostly 2002. Next slide. I've been involved in environmental justice for over 20 plus years. I have been on multiple appointments throughout the nation and the state. I'm a former commissioner for the Port of Oakland for 5 years. Next slide. One of the things I'm always talking about, how we dig deep and grow out to make it better. Next slide. This is Brian. He's been involved with us here in West Oakland for over 20 years.
Looking very determined.
Yes. We are a environmental justice community organization that deal mostly with air, water, and soil, and also development, designing, initiatives, and planning. Next slide. It's always been about West Oakland. This is a statement that Brian made. Everybody can read that.
Mm-hmm. Our intention is that you all speak with your own voices. That's a principle of environmental justice, and we hold that dearly.
Next slide. So you see, our mission is about increasing environmental justice, public health, air quality, and land use awareness. And at the last bullet is to inform the neighborhood of advocacy tools, set a priority, foster political education, and make research and data available. One of our things that that I just speak about earlier is that how do we have the research and data to be very intimate in our process of all our work that we do, and how you use the power of the research and data to put forth policy, regulations, and as such, and policy as we try to make these changes is not to impact people of West Oakland, especially the Black people and all people who will be suffer from the harm of not having clean air, clean water, and clean land. Next slide. All right. If people don't know, there are such a thing as called the principles of environmental justice. There's 17 principles that go back to October 1991, which was drafted. And those principles really hold dearly to me, to being more including about harm that comes from pollution, harm that comes from those pollution, harm from where people are placed and space. And I hope that you guys everyone get a chance to review all the principles. And we added the major link to really get people to start familiarizing themselves. And our method, go back, next slide. And okay, one of our principles and our methodology is environmental justice is about reduce, reuse, recycle, relieve of all negative impacts, revive our community, and build relationships. Next slide. And these are our tools that we use and our resources. Next slide. And we have a collaboration model where we coordinate with everybody and anyone in the government, national governmental organization, a local organization, a church, we will partner with you. But we also need to understand with that partnership comes how to empower the community, how to establish roles, and as a partner, define partnership and responsibility as partners, and then accountability as partners. Next slide. We also have our own air monitoring equipment to support our findings with the research and data. This is one of our devices that we have. It's called a dust trap that measure PM 2.5 and 10. So when you do your own type of investigations and develop evidence about air quality, this is considered also citizen science.
Ms. Margaret, I don't think we have time for our entire slideshow, but why don't you tell folks about the AIR plan, and I think we're going to do some rounds at local organizations and go through integrated.
Okay. In 2017, the state of California passed a law that supported communities like West Oakland up and down the state of California to be involved in getting their own evidence with technical support and research, either as from air monitoring based on whatever that concern for that community, or develop an air emission reduction plan. West Oakland was one of the first communities in Northern California that received that grant. So we've been in this grant as a partner with Bay Area Air Quality. We have developed 89 strategies for community groups, for subcommittee groups that meet throughout the month. And we have a steering committee that meets the first Wednesday of every month. But the action plan Owning Our Air is online. I wish we had put up that link so people could follow it and get some more understanding of the emission reduction planning.
All right. Let's move on to, there's some other air quality data embedded in the city's slide deck. So why don't we move forward to that? And obviously, everybody's invited to be involved. And we're going to put some connection information in the chat.
I really just did also. She just put the chat about the air district on it in the chat. On the number 7 chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Brian and Miss Margaret. That was a great introduction to your work and environmental justice. So I'm going to start just by introducing the Zero Emission Vehicle Action Plan. It's a plan that the city is creating, and it's coming about for 3 main reasons. First, we have the Governor of California's executive order from last fall. The governor's order committed to an elimination of the sales of new gasoline and or internal combustion passenger vehicles by 2035. So in this plan, we want to create strategies and actions that can prepare residents for this reality. Next, we are guided by Oakland's recently passed 2030 Equitable Climate Action Plan, or ECAP for short, which some of you may know about. This is Oakland's bold response to climate change adopted by City Council last summer. It commits Oakland to achieving carbon neutrality by 2045. And the Zero Emission Vehicle Action Plan is listed in the ECAP. So this plan is, we're fulfilling the ECAP through this plan. Finally, there's a deep inequality in regards to where zero emission vehicle is located within the city of Oakland and what communities are affected by climate change and air pollution. I want to make it clear that this is a clean mobility transition that is currently happening in our transportation system, And we expect demand for these vehicles to increase and more investment from both the public and private sectors. A major reason for this plan is to be in the position to prepare communities like West Oakland for the transition and to make sure the neighborhood isn't left out of the possible benefits of this coming change. Next slide. I want to pivot to public health and environmental justice in the context of in the context of Oakland and West Oakland. So we know that air pollution and gasoline-powered cars and trucks increase the risk of early death from heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, and respiratory disease. West Oakland is more exposed to pollution than communities in the hills, and in return may experience greater impacts from the pollution. For example, communities of color like West Oakland are up to 50% new cases from air pollution of asthma, compared to in the Oakland Hills only 20% new cases. And so there's an incredible disparity between those two communities. Great, next slide. And the problem comes to play where there is, where the pollution is in the city of Oakland, in West Oakland, doesn't line up to where there is access for zero emission vehicles and clean mobility options that could address those problems. Next slide.
Michael, could I jump in a second?
Yes, please do. I think I accidentally gave a limited.
Let's go back
version.
one slide. Let's go back
Yeah.
let's go back one slide, maybe two slides. One more slide. Yeah. So I want to make sure folks understand, in the Bay Area, 2,500 people a year die from vehicle pollution. That's from nothing else. They died because of that. This AB slide here shows a location in the hills by census tract. So these are fairly small and precise areas, and a place in West Oakland over a census tract near Highway 24. And you can see that we have 5 out of 10 new cases of asthma in children comes from nitrogen oxide. Specifically, this was about oxides of nitrogen, nitrogen oxide and nitrogen dioxide, all of which come from burning, from combustion, burning fuels for transportation. And in the Oakland Hills, that's only 2 out of 10 children. And so there's a really important thing. It's not the fault of the people in the hills. It's not the fault of the people who live in West Oakland. It's the fault of a transportation system that is intensely polluting the Flatlands neighborhoods with particularly NOx and to some degree diesel particulate. Diesel particulate we've ratcheted down on. NOx is still a problem, and the only way to get rid of it is by eliminating combustion vehicles. The next slide, please. I want everybody, it's hard to see, but I want people to see, if you look at the green space, there's about 4,000 vehicles. If you look at West Oakland, there's 362. And so if you compare that to the last numbers in that last slide, it's like, this is really a disconnect. And so we've got to work on this disconnect, right? Our neighborhood should be green. They should be the darkest green. We should have the most electric vehicles because we got the most kids affected by transportation emissions. So I'll hand it back to you, Michael.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for that, Brian. I was missing some pieces of my notes and you've filled it in perfectly. Thank you so much. So yeah, so basically with the plan, the outcomes we're looking at is we want basically a roadmap for transitioning Oakland to a zero emission vehicle mobility system. We want a set of strategies and actions that can guide investment for this clean mobility infrastructure with a focus on communities like West Oakland that are currently left out of the clean mobility sector today. And then finally, we want to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of clean mobility throughout all neighborhoods in Oakland to make sure that we can that we are addressing those air pollution things that are happening in communities like West Oakland. All right, And next. So yeah, now we're gonna transition to the discussion portion of the workshop. And just for the first side, we're gonna talk about just zero emission vehicles generally and the infrastructure and how do you like to have that look in West Oakland. So kind of one of the outcomes that we're looking in this workshop is that participants will understand zero emission vehicles and electric vehicle incentives. The Department of Transportation will record your thoughts, questions, and concerns about zero emission vehicles. And then we also can understand what barriers to clean mobility exist in West Oakland and what possible solutions we should pursue to overcome those barriers. Next. Yeah, next slide. So to start this portion of this first discussion portion, I just want to go over just general definitions of the zero emission vehicles. And these are going to be basically the types of mobility that we'll be looking at in the zero emission vehicle plan and the infrastructure that supports them. Battery electric vehicles. This is the cleanest mobility option. It runs 100% on electricity and does not pollute the environment. So no oil changes are needed, and there is no gasoline engine, so they're the cleanest and lowest cost to drive and maintain over time. Plug-in hybrids in comparison run on electricity for a limited number of miles, so are not considered completely zero emission vehicles for the purposes of the plan. Hydrogen fuel cell buses and cars powered by hydrogen gas stored in the vehicle and only releases water vapor and warm air. Hydrogen fuel stations are less common, but some public transit buses and heavy duty trucks have switched to hydrogen. E-scooters and e-bikes, some collectively call these micromobility. These are electric powered vehicles that can be operated alone and in bike lanes. They can be individually owned or part of a shared set of vehicles. And then next, I want to just go over the different types of electric charging infrastructure. Level 1, this is your basic home outlet. It charges in about 17 to 25 hours, so 4 to 5 miles of range per hour, and could be sufficient for people who don't have to drive far every day. Level 2, that's for both home and workplace charging, charge fully in about 4 to 5 hours. Can add about 14 to 35 miles of range per hour of charging time. And then level 3 is fast charging, charges in 30 to 60 minutes, can add up to 100 miles of range in about 30 minutes of charging. And this is what level 3 charging is what we'd like to see for the mostly public charging. All right, next slide. All right, and before I pass it off to Wob, I just want to make it clear, like Brian had said in the beginning, there currently are no public EV chargers currently open within West Oakland. Most chargers are mostly concentrated in downtown Oakland and North Oakland, kind of mirroring that earlier image we saw of where electric vehicles are and where they're not. But we expect electric charging to be an incredibly important piece of infrastructure going into the next decade. So we want to make sure we prioritize bringing this infrastructure to West Oakland in an equitable way. However, there are planned hydrogen EV charging station by Wake Avenue in West Oakland, and East Bay Community Energy is planning major charging plaza at City Center West Garage in downtown, which will be relevant for West Oakland residents. Next and final slide. Yes, we're gonna transition to discussion right now, Kristen, and you can answer. So Brian, I'll let you open up the discussion section for this first part right now.
Sure. Thank you. And I want to, for our whole team, apologize a little because we told you this is a 60-minute meeting. There is a lot of material that we'd like to share with you. We will probably ask you in a little while if you'd like to stay a little longer, and that will be totally up to you. But if we're on a roll, we might want to stay an extra 15 minutes and see what we can accomplish. We're going to move into this section now where we're asking you what you think, right? So a couple of
Christine Lewis has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Well, it works into this actually. I noticed in the types of vehicles you were discussing that you did not have the four-wheeled electric vehicles that seniors who are disabled often use to get around. how do you deal with those? There's so many types. Some of them are very foldable and portable, and some of them weigh up to 250 pounds, but they are nonetheless ways of transportation. Could you answer that? Thank you.
Well, I don't go ahead. I'm
yeah,
not sure we have a specific answer, but that's a really important thing to raise. That's what this meeting's about. It's like, what are everyone's feelings about zero emission vehicles, and where do they belong, and where do the facilities to support them belong? That's exactly the right kind of question to be asking. Although I'm not sure staff, I'll let Michael speak, but I'm not sure staff is ready to tell you exactly what they would do with that. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, to briefly answer your question, I think that has come up sometimes, and I think arguably those type of vehicles could be considered micromobility in the same realm as e-scooters and e-bikes. And I think there's overlap in like how they both need to be charged in the same way. And so that is something that we have had conversations about and are looking at. And if you can speak more about what that might look like if they are more integrated into the plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we invite you to think about all the things. They may not have been a picture. I've had people say to me, well, where can I charge my electric wheelchair when I'm out running around the city? Because that's how I get around town, right? And there are people who are unhoused in electric wheelchairs, and they like, where are they supposed to go? All of those issues are important in this plan. And it's only all of you who can tell the city that these are important issues. So thank you, Kristen, really for bringing up what might seem like an obscure question, but it is really an important one. So we wanted to get a general sense here and about people's experience now. There's a variety of layers to this issue of zero emission vehicles, electric cars, electric scooters, everything. But we want to get a little bit of a baseline where folks are at. We won't spend the whole evening on this, but and what we'd like is when you speak, please say your name and introduce yourself and what neighborhood you're in. So I see a couple of hands already. I don't know what the order was. I'll start at the top of my screen. Jamoki, please unmute yourself.
Okay, great. Greetings, everybody. Thank you so much, Brian and Margaret, for bringing this forward. I have been geeking out on this for like 3 years because we're 2 years pandemic damn near, right? So it was before that, and I would go to San Francisco and catch the BART and go to these meetings like once a month. And I met people from all across the Bay. I met people all across Europe. And I learned so much. And I live in West Oakland and have lived here for a while, raised babies here, and have represented it also as an elected official on the school board. So I am like, I got too much going on, right? Like, I'm like, how do we put this into West Oakland schools as an educational component of it, right? Like, and I don't mean like the class to learn what is it. I want the class that teaches you how to be an electrician or a carpenter or whatever it is that builds out these stations, right? Like that's your class credit. That's how you graduate high school. So, the educational component. I think a lot about, like, my friend had electrical vehicle, I guess 3, 4 years or 5 years. She's had it for a minute now. But I remember her having the electric car anxiety, where she worked in Palo Alto, lived in Oakland, and was always freaked out on whether or not she was going to make it back and forth. And so you can imagine 5 years ago, I actually kind of did know they left because there was like 2 or 3 of them and like the grocery store parking lots. So I just think that this anxiety piece around folks who are already kind of ahead of us and fast forward or using electrical vehicles, there's a lot to ask them about what might work. And so just that this idea of community engagement, I think, is really important. But then for me to racialize it a little bit, like the work that I feel like I have to be present in West Oakland is, how do we interrupt gentrification? How do we create opportunities for people to actually live here and then have a charging station and have a car and have a job And so I definitely feel like I want to be, I want us to problem solve for that. And then I think just the last thing is like, I have a lot of friends on my block and they love old cars, right? They love cars. And so they actually know how to fix an engine. They actually know this combustible thing. And so my, thing is there's gonna be some old G's and new G's that are not really gonna be down for the electrical car thing. So just thinking about that as a part of, again, I don't know if this is, West Oakland Environmental Projects is taking that on, because I do think that there's a level of people that are like, what, give up my car? Like, you know what I mean? So just that, the public health piece, you guys got good, but just like the information on it. So anyway, I could go on. I'm gonna stop, but I appreciate being here. Thank you,
Jamoki. No, you teed up a bunch of good issues that we're going to try to touch on as we go forward. And, love of technology is one. I'm in that generation, love those beautiful old, Detroit monsters. These are all really important. Gentrification, is it just a symbol of gentrification? Some people think a tree on the street is a symbol of gentrification. How do we, our challenge is to bring folks along, right? Make sure they're included. And so I think these are really important questions. And to the degree that we can address some of them tonight, it's really valuable. CB, good friend of ours, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I'm literally calling from my car because I stopped errands to participate in this meeting. I'm really excited you guys are having it. Thank you. Thank you. First of many, I'm sure. I wanted to just mention, as a person who drives an electric vehicle, I actually drive a hybrid, so I can do gas or plug-in. It's called a Chevy Volt. I've had it for about 2 years. And I think for everybody who, there's a misperception, I think, that electric vehicles are all really expensive or all made overseas. And that wasn't true before and is definitely changing. And I just kind of want to reassure folks who love Chevy, who love GM, who love Ford, like these technologies are here now. You can buy them as used cars. I personally wanted to get really serious about global climate change, and this was something that I could do, was buy this car. My experience plugging in has been really interesting because when I first got my car pre-pandemic, I guess like September 2019, there were a lot of charging stations that the city had set up that were free. And some of them were located in city-owned parking garages. Some of them were actually in public lots that were owned by the city. So it was a really great way for people to kind of try it out. All of those charging stations have converted and they're now paid. And I think one of the things that's challenging that's happening right now is, we're getting to a place where there aren't enough charging stations where there's always one open. There's also different technologies for different vehicles, right? So I can't charge at a Tesla station currently, but a Tesla person can charge where I can charge my Chevy. And so there's definitely starting to be, I think, a need for some of this racial equity and economic equity lens. I was thinking today about what would it look like to have some kind of an EBT card to encourage people below a certain income to allow them to charge for free if they already qualify for something like food stamps or WIC or AFDC, right? So that those folks, their charging is actually subsidized. I think that would work really well in West Oakland. I could talk about this forever, but the last thing I'll say that I think is really important for people to kind of start wrapping their head around is that this is a shift in how we interact with our cars. So right now, you go to the gas station, you fill up in 5 to 10 minutes and you keep driving. You do that during the day as part of your regular activity. Charging is going to be more like while I'm at the hairdresser, while I'm at church, while I'm sleeping at night. My car is charging so that then I can go do the things that I need to do with a charged battery later on. And so I think we need to be thinking about things like, can we incentivize the churches to put chargers in their church parking lots that maybe provide the church with a revenue stream, and are only for church members on Sundays and maybe on Thursdays when the choir rehearses, but are open to the public the rest of the week? Do we want to take some of these major boulevards in West Oakland, whether that's Adeline or 18th, and actually like build out charging stations so that people who live in older houses as renters like myself, where the house hasn't been retrofitted, and so it's actually probably dangerous for me to try and charge my car when none of the electricity in the house is grounded properly, and the landlord's not going to make that financial investment. You know, can we put something on 18th Street where we create a protected bike lane, but people can be charging overnight because they're parking on 18th Street anyways. And it makes it more accessible to folks. So I'll stop for now. I'm happy to help out if you guys have a committee or whatever. But I think this is really great, and it's really going to help us in the community to have cleaner air.
Thank you, CB. I think between you and Jamoka, you've written half the plan already. It's like, it's great to know that there's,
and she actually stole my idea about the churches. No, you didn't steal it. But this is how crazy I am. I have actually done Google Maps of many of the West Oakland parking lots. So
Right.
I can actually give you the list of like 8 or 9 churches, and I've already kind of talked to them. So yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Well, you need to send that list to Michael and the team over at the city. That's exactly what they want from our community, is our recommendations on how this should all work.
I also just want to point out, like, as far as like specific places in West Oakland, the city also has an interactive map. And so I'll just share that link
Oh, please do. Yeah, this map
in
is
the chat. Yeah. And so you can, people have already placed pinpoints already, but if you have an idea, you can share it during this discussion now, or go ahead and put a pinpoint there. That's going to be an important part of the plan.
very good.
Oh, can I mention one last thing real quick?
Okay. Yes, CB.
Because this is a long-term plan, and over the next 20 to 30 years, gas stations will become less financially viable. I think it's really important as part of this plan to be addressing future brownfields that will be created when maybe the Arco station at Grandin Market closes, or the Shell station that's down by the 880 closes, right? We need to make sure that the gas industry doesn't just abandon those plots for, you know, some future remediation, as they've done with so many other brownfields in West Oakland.
Great thought and comment. It is an important thing. We don't want to relive the industrial pollution legacy that we already have. So thank you for that. I want to just sort of run through the group and see, is there anybody who's never driven an electric vehicle? Test drive, friend's car, anything like that? Anybody? Just popcorn. Open your mic and tell us you have no familiarity whatsoever with electric cars. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. So we can sort of jump forward. We wanted to sort of get to this point. And we've heard some concerns, right? Mileage, distance, range, availability of charging. That's sort of a given now in West Oakland. We don't have any chargers. Why don't we move on to the next group of questions? I think we've heard a tremendous amount of information. And I encourage you to go look at that interactive map, because it's interesting. There are literally hundreds of chargers in West Oakland. They're all private. They're all, you know, it's not people trying to be selfish, but they bought a car and they need to put a place to plug it in. Let's see, I'm going to hand it to...
yeah, I can just give a brief...
So we're going to talk. Yeah, we're going to talk a bit about how you could buy an electric car, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of quickly show the existing incentives at multiple levels of government for individuals to purchase electric vehicles.
If he wants to buy the electric car, they got a lot of incentives.
Yeah, so
I didn't say you, I said that.
Initially, it may seem like an electric vehicle is completely unaffordable, but with incentives and lower gas and maintenance costs, it can actually be within reach depending on what you're looking for. So I guess there's the idea that it's all Teslas, but it's not just Teslas. And of course, we talked about this earlier, more companies are coming out with different models as time goes on. There are particular income qualified rebates that you can apply for that can substantially reduce the price of electric vehicles, as well as other incentives from both the state and federal level. The right side, after 5 years of ownership, an electric vehicle can be significantly less expensive than owning a gasoline vehicle. Electric fuel costs are significantly less than gasoline, usually around 1/3 what you would spend on gasoline. In California, an EV owner can expect to save around $11,500 in comparison to gasoline. And while the prices for charging can vary depending on home, work, or public charging, and as we talked about that as well, it is going to be an equity issue that we're going to have to really look into. I know we have some individuals from many different, handful of different organizations that are experts about these particular programs, and they can answer some in-depth questions if you do have them. So for those individuals, feel free to chime in and answer the questions as we talk about this a little bit. But yeah, as next slide, we can go to the questions.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to say is every major vehicle maker is now making a marketable electric vehicle, but they aren't advertising them because there's still such a huge market for people who want to go fast and spin donuts and drive a Mustang and a big truck, right? I was shocked to see the statistic the other day that the auto dealers spent $35 billion on advertising annually, all of them together. And yet they don't advertise electric vehicles. They don't show them racing down the road. A Tesla will go 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds, faster than almost any gas-powered vehicle. They're not advertising them because they don't think we want to buy them. They don't think the general market wants them, and that's a very important piece of information for us all to note. Unless we tell them, and unless we show them, and with our desire to purchase, and unless we maybe we write a letter to Ford or somebody and say, I don't want to see Mustangs doing spin outs. I want to see electric vehicles, right? We have to tell them what we want. So another discussion question.
Brian?
Yes.
Before we move on, I just want to note there's a question in the chat from Serlene Grant.
Oh, sure.
I can read it. So Serlene says, as gas stations close and as we work on car and as the work on car repairs becomes different, i.e. there are not spark plugs to change, where or how is workforce training in this new paradigm? Is the new job churches and elsewhere and maintaining?
You seem to be stalling a little bit, or it's me.
Hi, everybody. Just a basic question as I was listening to Stevie especially talk about, the love, and you, Brian, talk about the love of cars. It's all different now. It's not how we grew up. So all those folks who could do work in their garage, like we all have a friend who could fix our car for $20 in their garage. What happens to that person, that sidewalk economy, so to speak?
I think it's a super good question. I think that, when we are confronted with, and I will just share, when we're confronted with new technology, the question is, what happens? There was a time when the best person you could know was a wheelwright, because he could make a new wheel for your wagon. And there was a guy who could really fix the harnesses for your horses. And it was like, what happens to his job now that these, these smoking gas cars are coming along? Well, they all learned what a carburetor was, and they learned how to adjust valve timing. I think we have to face this in the same way. We have to teach young people that this electric car is just as cool as that other car. It goes really fast. It has all these qualities. The question is, where do we start teaching them? Where a lot of folks are saying, Does it belong in the high schools? Does it belong in the trade schools? Where does that belong? And I think that's another really important question as we shift a consciousness, right, around transportation. It is no different. It is no less. In fact, it's probably easier than the consciousness that was shifted from horsepower, literal horsepower, to gasoline power. If we think back 125, whatever it is, years, imagine that transition. And so I think that's a question for all of us. Where does this belong? How do we integrate it into the right spaces?
Ryan, I think I think Aquanetta had her hand up earlier. We might have missed it. Aquanetta, can you, sorry that we missed you. Do you want to tell us what you have to say if you still, yeah, go ahead.
It was just that I had not had any experience with an electric vehicle. I've never driven.
Good to know.
Okay.
Do you have any particular stress or concern about electric vehicles? Would you like to try one out?
Sure.
Yeah, sounds like a cool idea.
Sure.
I had to say I drove one with a friend who was trying to buy one about 6 months ago. I was really amazed. It was super fun. I'd never driven one before, and they're so powerful and smooth, and everything about it was cool. I wish I could buy one. Do you have any particular concerns, Aquanetta?
No,
about it?
not right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody think there's a disadvantage to owning an electric car? Anything that, you would feel like, well, I got to trade, there's a trade-off here, right?
Yeah, what's your electricity bill going to be while you're charging it? Is it going to go up exponentially?
Good question. I think if we circle back to that slide you had, Michael, about cost, no one can predict the future cost of electricity. That's a fact. But currently, the costs of maintenance and fuel tend to be much lower than the cost of buying and then the cost of a gas-powered vehicle. We have to remember that not only fuel that we don't purchase, and you can actually calculate your own fuel purchases on an annual basis if you just look at your gas bills, how often you're putting $50 in the tank. But there's also all of the maintenance. There's no oil changes. There's no antifreeze. None of that stuff is necessary. It appears at this moment.
Electricity, is that factoring in the amount of gas that you'll be paying a year? And does it also factor in the electricity that you'll be using at your home to charge the car?
That's a question for Michael and the team. When we look at gasoline at $4.20, is that versus electricity? Is that what that means?
Yeah. So PG&E did some PG&E.ev.pg&e.com vehicles. I put that comparison in there. You can compare different gasoline vehicles to electric vehicles, and that's basically comparing what you would pay in gas versus what you're going to be paying with electricity. And the thing is, it's going to be always less than what you would be paying with a gasoline vehicle, particularly in California.
And those numbers will be different. I mean, I drive a pickup truck, gets about 18 miles per gallon. But if you drive a car that's more efficient and gets 25 or 28 miles per gallon, those numbers are going to be different. And that would be something you want to consider in the transition. How quickly you want to get rid of an existing functional vehicle. These are all worthwhile questions. The folks in the trucking community are considering the same thing. I mean, my truck would go another 500,000 miles. This is a good time to trade it in. But there's, you add to that whatever you feel about environment and your neighborhood and asthma and stuff. There is, for those who can afford it, there is a kind of, social opportunity investment cost. for those who may not be able to afford that, there are hard numbers here about, it is cheaper to own one of these electric cars. That's what it comes down to. If you were going to spend $5,000 on a 14-year-old car today, that same $5,000 probably, if you took advantage of these programs, would buy you an electric car. And I think that's one of the fundamental questions, because when we live in a neighborhood where folks go out and spend $5,000 on a 14-year-old car because they're driving a 20-year-old car, right? And so we have to help people understand that there may be a better way to use that same money. And we have to make sure that the opportunities exist and they know where these programs are. Kirby.
I just
My
want to jump.
name's Rita. Hello, I have a question. My hand has been up.
Sorry, Rita, just a really quick procedural note here. So we're at 6:57. I think the conversation's going great. I would love to extend a little bit, but Brian, just want to pass that on to you and see if you just want to continue.
We at the helm of this process are willing to go longer if folks wish to do that. We know some of you might have to drop off, but as long as you're here, we'll be here. So let's continue the conversation.
Okay. My name's Rita Duncan, and I was invited by Sirlene Grant. I'm president of the board of directors for Orloma, which is in the unincorporated part of Alameda County, and we are developing a plan to transition our maintenance trucks to electrical vehicles. And you, Brian, you posed a question, what are the concerns? What about the safety and the regulations around owning, electrical vehicle? I know there's been a lot of news around the Tesla batteries, taking maybe 5 to 6 hours to put out a fire. And for some of the storage units, the electrical storage units, a lot of fire departments aren't equipped to deal with fires that could be started by those. Those are some of my concerns. Where's regulation around it? And what are some of the safety concerns should a consumer be aware of?
Mm-hmm. I think those are really good questions to raise. I think that, it needs to go in this plan. The city needs to be talking to the fire department. We need to make sure we have the right technology and the right skills. Right now, fire department personnel have to know how to deal with a burning car. And I can tell you that there've been a few on my street, so they have to know what to do when they show up with a burning car and full of gasoline. That's a good question. How do the emergency responders get trained to deal with these issues? I think the issue of battery safety is also a good question. I don't think we're here to solve those questions, but we're here to ask them, and I appreciate you raising that issue. Any other concern thoughts right now?
Brian, since we're at the end, we definitely continue the conversation. I just want to move on just to let people know what next steps are, and also just let people know what other resources are available at the Zoom right now.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we want to incorporate a lot of the feedback we got today for actions and strategies within the Zero Emission Vehicle Action Plan. Also, we'll be doing a second workshop in partnership with WOA, focused on specific actions and strategies focused for West Oakland that we'd like to see. And so we want to do that sometime fall 2021. And then additionally, the final draft plan will looking to come out in later fall 2021. And then we'll be presenting the final plan to City Council in February, March 2022. Okay. So we're on a pretty fast train for this, but we're really happy that you're able to be a part of the process.
So I wanted to ask folks then, several of you are super enthusiastic and would like to be involved, I think, in continued discussions here. What's a good medium for that? Obviously, an hour Zoom call is not a good medium for that.
Right.
How how would folks here on this call like to see the next workshop take place? There's one more workshop in this series, but it doesn't mean it has to be the end of anything. Got any thoughts?
The hands are up. There's Jamoki, CB's hand, Rita's hand, and my hand. I can see.
Okay.
I can just say goodbye because I got to jump to another meeting. I don't care. I'm here. I do think that we should figure out the buckets and the levels of conversation, because there's just like, what is an electrical vehicle to what is PG&E going to do to change the lot, right? Like there's some policy, like, you know what I mean? This is going to take us through people to policy, back to people to money. And so however we organize ourselves, I just want to stress that we probably should organize ourselves because it's such a deep kind of processing. That's it. I love you guys. I will talk soon. Call me. And I apologize if I took up too much space, but as you can see, I'm really excited. But sometimes I do know how to step back.
Thank you, Jamoki.
Love you.
See you later.
See you later.
CB, your hand is still up. Was that an old hand or a new hand?
It was an old hand, but I'll just say, this is awesome. I do think one thing that might be helpful is to do the next meeting as a walking tour. I would suggest Emeryville, because there are, let me think, 1, 2, 3 different kinds of charging stations within like a 5-minute walk from each other, maybe even 4. Sort of from where the Trader Joe's is to where the stairs to the train are, to cross the train track. And then maybe we can meet somewhere outside in that area to like talk more so that we're COVID safe, but also in person and not, great
idea. It's always nice to see things in reality in 3 dimensions, right? Kaneda is Kaneda. If I got it wrong, your hand is up.
It's Kaneda.
Kaneda, thank you.
So some of my concerns are around battery recycling and how, it's a great idea to move the future forward with electric vehicles and solar powered energy. But I worry that it's just like a changing of hands of power. When it comes to mining, it doesn't change anything when it comes to mining, except now it's shifted to mining for more of Earth's rare metals in order to make these things. And then they come out of the earth natural, but they'll never be able to go back in and break down. And so we need a long-term plan for that if we're going to continue on the path that we're going. Otherwise, like, it's just a shifting of power, and we should probably look in another direction towards the future of clean mobility and what that would look like in different sources of energy, renewable energy.
Very good point. And it's interesting. There's a company here in town that has reached out to us a couple of times. I think they call themselves Iris, and they're trying to look at a new way to reduce the environmental impacts of lithium mining. They are young folks in a startup here in Oakland, but those are really important questions. We don't just want to transition from one toxic technology to another. Jake Friedman, your hand is up.
Yeah, hi everyone. Jake Friedman from Caltrans District 4. Just curious about what role commercial and freight traffic plays in this electrification issue, and how that'll be incorporated into the needs here, because I know that there is a role in pollution, so that made me think of it.
Well, as a member of Caltrans, do you have any thoughts on how
Right.
those things fit in together, or where transportation agencies belong in this discussion?
Yes, that's why we funded this grant.
Why we funded what?
That's why they funded this actual project here, to reach out to the community. That Caltrans is the prime funder for this project.
But also, can I respond to that?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, as one of the freight related items, we do know that the Port of Oakland is bringing in 30 electric trucks as a pilot for West Oakland. Now, and we also, as West Oakland environmental indicators, have this port and freight collaborative strategy meetings that Caltrans need to be sitting at to support the freight movement, and how to be more engaging for funding to regulate all everything that has to do with freight is electrified.
So it's a very important question in our community, West Oakland, because trucking is such an important and significant sector in transportation. It's not just scooters and bikes and electric cars. It's heavy duty trucks. Where do they charge? Where do they plug in and charge? How is that distributed through the freight industry? We have trucks who park under freeways. Is that a good place to put chargers for heavy duty trucks? This is a really important question for an agency like Caltrans. Do they build infrastructure for that? Do they continue to allow that to happen? Does someone else build that infrastructure? Who builds the infrastructure is very important. The picture on the screen right now is the city worked with a whole lot of other agencies, I'm sure, and they put these chargers in over by, I think it's called Jackson Park. A lot of folks call it Old Man Park, or the old guys sit around and play chess over there. The big issue that turned out the big issue there was what they would look like. The community wanted them to be, to have murals on them. That was more important actually than whether it was EV chargers. So how we address this issue is very important, right? What we consider to be important is important. And as Jamoki said, there are a lot of buckets of information that we've got to dig into. And as this schedule on the wall, on the screen says, they're hoping to have a final draft plan by the fall of this year. That's only a few months away. So it's really the most important question for me tonight at this point is, how do we get to have our vision for West Oakland clarified by something like November of 2021? What do we need to do to move this conversation forward? And CB suggested a walk to go see how it works in Emeryville. Any other thoughts on how we move this conversation forward? Feel free to just open your mic and introduce yourself.
Hello.
Pineda?
Go ahead. You got it.
Okay. I think that just being proactive and tapping into different parts of Oakland and other organizations who have more reach and a broader network. I'm just going to give a quick example of something that I recently witnessed. There was a global concert, right? And they had 2 weeks to practice. And they got all of these countries together and pulled together in 2 weeks, an entire global concert just over the internet. And I thought that that was amazing organization, and it didn't take much, and it showed how much can be done in such a short amount of time. And if people were to connect with their networks like that, work with their groups, pull into like different meetings, also do more interactive things, like you can build this, we can build it out. It's just going to take, activating our communities and our networks, and that could look in different, it could look different ways. It could look like social media. It could look like people talking to their families and then tapping back into one central space. That's what I have right now. It was more organized in my head.
I think those are fantastic ideas, and it is one of the challenges that we don't have. A lot of groups have the capacity and the linkages to use social media, to use video, to use online film and streaming, and not all of our organizations do. We all have different capacities. I would really invite you to reach out to us, to Transform, to the city, with ideas like that, because I think you're absolutely right. If we can put together a global concert and enjoy music, we ought to be able to put together a global workshop or a global information and idea sharing session that can help move these ideas forward. Let's see, Isa, I think you were next.
Issa. Yeah.
Isa, sorry.
Oh, well, it's my first time hearing about this plan. Actually, I hopped on the meeting, so I didn't have too many questions. I was kind of just soaking everything in, but I do feel like it is it's a great plan, and just getting these charges into West Oakland is definitely a good spot, especially seeing all the information. So my point here is that I feel that getting out information is one of the most important things in telling people about the different options with electric vehicles, because I know that many people I've heard about the push to move all vehicles in California by 2035 electric. But the first thing you think about is, most people say is, no, I'm not going to buy a Tesla. That's part of the misinformation right there, because that's not the only option. And that's what many people may think in. Just actually giving out or showing information that we have here that we talked about today, just the different options that you have with electric vehicles, different, benefits that you have, quality. It's low and maybe not a whole new vehicle, but something maybe used. But after hearing the information here, it makes you rethink like what you want to get. So I think that just especially getting out the information and giving out options to people will definitely get a lot more people on board and make them know that this is actually doable.
Thank you, Isa. And there have been changes in the programs in the past couple of years. In the early days, a couple of years ago, you couldn't buy a secondhand vehicle, but now the programs allow people to buy secondhand electric vehicles. So there's a lot of motion here, and you're absolutely correct. And we would agree with you. The key is to get the information to people. And so we can't do it in one meeting, but I'm really excited. I'm really happy to see the kind of turnout we've had. It means it's an important meeting to folks. It's an important subject. We have to continue to work together to figure out how to do that kind of outreach. And we have to figure out ways to share this information with all different ages, all different crowds, right? All different audiences. Reaching people my age is very different than reaching people in their 20s. And so it's going to take more than what we're doing here tonight. But we really appreciate all of you being here. Any other thoughts as we roll on toward the end?
Brian, I just want to note a couple hands that are up.
Sure.
Ray Kidd and then JJ.
All right, Ray, good friend.
Well, thank you. Maybe I missed out on something, but is one of the part of the scope of this plan is to put charging stations in West Oakland, and if so, what's the financing plan? Is this from the city? Is this from the Air District? Is there a Biden from one of the pots of Biden money? Is that going to be financing this? And the other part of the question is, how practical is it to charge the charging stations with solar panels? What kind of is that a practical matter or does that? I'm sure it takes up a lot of space to put in solar panels, but that's it. I think that would be obviously a useful thing to do.
Good questions.
I can immediately answer as far as like part of the plan is that we're trying to figure out how to, like, first, like, okay, what does the city need to do to get this infrastructure in place? And then, like, okay, where is that funding going to come from? What grants do we need to put into place? Like, what staffing do we need to make sure that this infrastructure is put in place? Are there, like, what capital investments is the city going to have to make this infrastructure happen? So that's part of some of the work we've been doing as we've been developing the plan and doing outreach. As far as solar panels, not sure of the specifics. I don't know if anyone else knows on. I believe that's possible, but I think it would depend on the charging technology that is used that we're able to put in.
Mm-hmm. I think how we get the power, how we do it the most efficient way is all still in the pilot phase. I mean, there are thoughts about putting solar panels up, charging batteries, using the batteries when solar's not available, charging at night, that sort of thing. Using charge batteries at night when electricity from the grid is cheap, and then use it during the day. I don't think we have all those answers. But the driver is if the consumer wants it, then the market will have to figure out how to do it, right? That's the ultimate driver. We make those decisions, right? JJ.
Let me follow up if I can,
Sure.
Brian. So I think part of the plan should be then, if a private party, say for instance a church or a shopping center or something, wanted to put in some charging stations, could there be a financing plan for them to help a church finance it, and then they could pay it off with the revenue that comes in from that? So that might be a part of what the plan could incorporate.
I think it's a great idea. A lot of our churches have big empty roofs, and it would be perfect for solar panels. We need the energy utility providers like East Bay Community Energy at this table as well, helping to figure out where the energy comes from and how we support groups like churches and nonprofits and even private, warehouses. And we've got a giant climbing gym with a huge empty roof, brand new roof in West Oakland. We need panels up there, and those panels should be feeding any number of energy needs.
Brian, just real quickly, I want to pass it off to some of the partners we invited to the workshop to just share very briefly what they have going on and the programs that they work on. JJ from Bachman, I know you have your hand off, so I can just pass it to you. But also I know we have Jesse from UBCE and Ariane Erickson from Drive Clean Bay Area. So please feel free to just summarize like the work you do in the programs, and just let people know that the type of work you're doing in this space.
Thank you, Michael. My name is JJ. I work with Air Quality District, specifically with the Clean Cars for All program. And one of the things that we specifically want to target is West Oakland. We want to make sure that there's an equitable distribution of grants. And we seem to have a bit of a difficulty in reaching the West Oakland. I believe we can make a difference by increasing awareness, increasing the outreach. I think if folks in West Oakland could knew more about the program, they will have better choices to make. So, if they knew, I believe that there's a grant out there that provides $9,500 and up to $2,000 to install a level 2 in their homes, I think they would be more geared towards the EV route. And that's what we try to do. We're trying to target West Oakland, try to target communities of color, but it's a bit of a challenge. And I'm hoping that we could all connect and work together to expand our outreach to neighborhoods of color in West Oakland, Richmond, and so forth. But thank you for the time, and I'll pass it back to Michael.
There you
Question,
go.
JJ. JJ, this is Miss Margaret Gordon. This is the first time I met you. And I need to contact Jack Broadman and ask him why you have not been included in our AB 617 action plan for this particular program. Because I think you're doing a duplicate process by you being over here and we being over here with AB 617, and it should be including.
If I could address that, JJ, if you don't mind. My name is Joshua Abraham. I'm also with the Air District. And Ms. Margaret, I just wanted to touch base with you on that comment. JJ represents our Technology Implementation Office. And to date, we have not invited TIO into the discussion, except for the discussion you recently had with Ariana Flores, who's now in TIO. So just want to make that clarity. This workshop that you're having this evening, this came as a little bit of a surprise to, the AB 617 group. So without our knowledge, TIO signed up for this meeting, and I'm here to just gather information. But if you want, and the West Oakland EIP wants TIO to be deeply involved with MoCap going forward, we'll be happy to invite them.
Thank you.
Sounds like a good idea. It's always hard to make sure the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. So we continue to work together to try and have clarity and get the most value out of all of our efforts. We had a couple of other, how about East Bay Community Energy? They're on the line. Any thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jessie Denver and I oversee our transportation electrification program. We're working really closely with the city, both on the deployment of publicly available fast charging, as well as the city's municipal fleet electrification planning and charging infrastructure. And then of course, a number of you know that we're also engaged in the medium and heavy duty goods movement sector. But specifically tonight, I wanted to share good news with you that we're going to be developing. And for those of you who don't know us, East Bay Community Energy is the public power provider in Alameda County, including the city of Oakland. So residents get their electricity from EBCE and it's delivered to you through PG&E's wires and poles. You still get an electricity bill from PG&E and we are a line item on that bill for the electricity generation component of the bill. And so we, as a public power agency that was actually created by the city of Oakland and the 14 other jurisdictions in Alameda County, we sell that power at a lower price point with higher renewable energy content. So we are actually going to be developing at the City Center West parking garage, which is a City of Oakland garage, the largest fast charging hub in Oakland. And it's the second largest fast charging hub in the county of Alameda. And this facility, the city facility, is within the AB 617 West Oakland boundary. It's also a hotspot for multifamily properties. And it's adjacent to lots of amenities like restaurants and shops. And just this week, we received a grant from the Air District. Thank you very much, Air District folks on the line. We received a charge grant to help offset the cost of this project. So this fast charging hub will have 17 dual port fast chargers. And what that means is there will be 36 parking spaces that are dedicated to EV charging. The city is going to change this garage to 24/7 access, and to actually enter the garage and to park in an EV charging parking spot for the purpose of charging will be no cost. So you'll be able to access the garage at no cost. You will have to pay for charging. And EBCE will be setting those very affordable rates on these chargers that we own, but you will not have to pay a fee to actually enter the garage for up to 1 hour, which is plenty of time to charge your car. So we're super excited about this project, and we aim to have it open by fall of next year. So just wanted to share that with you all, that there
Exciting.
are DC fast chargers coming soon.
Great, great. And I did get the email recently that East Bay Community Energy is opening an RFP for I guess it's community solar, which means communities can be involved in the development of solar generation within their neighborhoods, and people can take advantage of that. Probably great opportunities to continue to think about what the value of community solar looks like and what those energy discounts can do for us. Maybe there's a way to link that eventually into EV charging. But thank you, Jesse. And who else did we have on the line from our special information folks? Ariane, please take over.
Hi there. I know we're running late, so just real quick, I put information in the chat box. Actera is a partner in the Drive Clean Bay Area Consortium, and we're located in Palo Alto. We want to address climate change, so we really are promoting the benefits of EVs in terms of addressing climate change and clearing our air. And we conduct regular workshops, both online and outside of COVID in person. We have general workshops for the general population, and we also conduct EV financial incentives clinics that take a deep dive into these rebates, which is the one that the Air District provides, and Driving Clean Assistance Program and the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program, and the Driving Clean Fuel Reward and the state rebate and the federal tax credits. Because of all of these rebates and grants, which sometimes do get oversubscribed, so the funding goes on and off. But because California does offer such a wealth of these grants, we believe there is an EV for everyone. And so that's the message that we try to get across by providing these workshops and these clinics. So please tell all potential EV adopters about these clinics and these workshops so that we can spread the word and enable people to afford and participate in the clean vehicle movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ariane. That's the goal. There's an EV for everyone. And while we're in the growth, that's the real opportunity here. While we're in this growth phase, while we're in this phase where we are really trying to promote, we as a society are really trying to promote, there is a lot of money available. Somewhere down the road, 2028, 2030, maybe you got to buy your own electric car. But right now, there's a lot of money available, and you can almost get one for free if you consider the maintenance costs and the gas savings and all those things after the incentives. So we have, I think, in all reasonable sense, come to the end of our evening. Want to leave the door open for anybody. The mic is open. If anybody out there, has last thoughts, particular recommendations, ways you'd like to be involved in the future, please, this is the time to jump in.
Yeah, I'll just say thank you everyone so much for coming. We really appreciate it, and we'll definitely be following up with all of the links and just the information, some of the information that was shared today, as well as how to be involved within the zero emission vehicle plan itself. You can reach me at this email here, or just the general zero emission vehicle email, zev@oaklandca.gov. If you have any questions or any further comments. But thank you so much for spending time, even beyond what we had put in the initial calendar invite. We really do appreciate the time that everyone took here today.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, all of you. This has been a really exciting to see this level of participation and enthusiasm. We have all of your names and addresses. This has all been recorded, along with the chat and all the comments, and staff will assemble it all into some notes, and we will be reaching back out to you in a month or so for a follow-up meeting to talk about the next step of the plan. So from West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project and Ms. Margaret and I, thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Everybody, take care.
Good night.
You'll be hearing from us soon.